Hello, welcome to Rough Cut Film Review. This is a review of Berbarian Sound Studio. Again, it's a bit late. I think I've already seen it out on DVD actually and Blu-ray, so obviously these things move very quickly these days with different distribution rules, etc, etc. So, Toby Jones, who can do no wrong as far as I'm concerned, stars as the sound engineer Gilderoy in a film by Peter Strickland, who I would describe as a sometime film director. He's only made 4 films since his 1997 debut, 2 of which were shorts, so really this is only his second feature film he's ever made, and I have absolutely no knowledge of his previous work before he's done this. So, Toby Jones, as I said, is fantastic, and in this he's even more fantastic than usual, if that were at all possible. So I think he's the bee's knees. Well, in this he's the bee's knees, shins, ankles, little toes, etc, etc. He's fantastic. He plays Gilderoy, as I've said. He's a sound engineer. His accent implies that he's from southeast London, I would have thought, as it goes through, which is really well done by Jones because he's actually Scottish in real life. Gilderoy has been hired by an Italian film studio to come and work on this Italian director's work, for which Jones appears to have an incredible lack of understanding of when he arrives. So the film picks up with him arriving there, and the reasons for Jones being hired are never fully explained, and I'll try and I could go into more detail then, but to a certain extent I think it's sort of giving away some spoilers. And I'm loath to do that in this film, and so much of it is open for interpretation as well that I really don't want to go into it. So anyway, I'm blathering on. So it turns out that the film that Jones is there to work on is a horror film. It's apparently more shocking than anything anyone has seen. Everyone says, "Oh, blimey Charlie," in Italian. "Blimey Charlie, this is all really, really violent." From what we can gather from the plot, so we're picking up everything about the film from Gilderoy's work on it as a sound engineer, the film seems to be full of witches and priests, and crucially, it's full of violence, extreme violence. Poor old Gilderoy is really upset at the prospect of having to work on a horror film. He hasn't worked on them before. Initially, it's not really clear what Gilderoy has been doing, but we're well aware it's something very wholesome. And Gilderoy is a very wholesome sort of a person. So once Gilderoy says, "Oh, blimey Charlie, I've never worked on a horror film before, I'm not keen on this," the director, who up until this point had actually been extremely charming to him and very nice to him, then suddenly turns on him and says, "My films are not horror films. How dare you say that? Never say that to me again. My films are about life. They're about real life. They're about experiences. They're about the real world as it actually is." So Gilderoy, being all, sort of meek in English, sort of apologises and goes back to smashing marrows against the floor, for example, to simulate a woman falling to her death, and just generally being too polite in English to cope with the masculine and aggressive Italian culture that he's walked himself into, and crucially, he does not speak the Italian language. So he spends a lot of the film trying to get his money back for the ticket that he's bought. It's clear that he's in financial trouble that has essentially trapped him there. He is unable to escape. He is unable to get money back from the studio, which he's been promised. They push him from pillar to post, and they do not treat him with respect because he's English, and essentially he's very meek and humble. So no one really takes him seriously. So he ends up putting all of his frustrations and his energies into his work. So most of the film is set within the sort of eerie red lights of the sound studio itself. As the film progresses, we get an increasing sense of Jones's character's frustration of being trapped in this film, and we notice actually the only exterior influence he has is letters from his mother, and as the film goes on, we get to read them along with Gilderoy. The tone of these letters from his mother starts going from very, very idyllic and English and green and lush, everything that Gilderoy misses and craves and needs back while he's working on this violent horror film. It starts to get replaced by darker imagery as Gilderoy's mind is more loaded down by these graphic images and the sounds and the experiences that he is having to be forced to go through. So Gilderoy is crucially, he is a creative influence and a part of, a crucial part of creating this destructive and macabre piece of work. He's bringing this into reality. So actually, as the film goes on, for me, it draws up more questions than it does answers, and we get a real sense of the ambiguity of the final act. And I can imagine a lot of people being sort of confused and disappointed by that. But for me, the ending was really, really strong. I didn't want someone to hold my hand at the end there and just say, right, that's what that is. I'd have been disappointed. I like the ambiguity. I don't always like it, but here it sits really, really nicely. And I enjoyed, after I'd finished, I just sat and had a little think about what Gilderoy's been grappling with and what it all actually meant. Now, I really can imagine, a lot of people just dismissing this film as being, boring, pretentious, ponderous, arty, all those things. But to me, actually, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a really interesting piece of work. And actually, as the film goes on, rather than explaining more, I mean, obviously in most films you start off with questions and then it answers throughout the film. Strangely enough, this one actually started on quite a level footing and then got stranger, and it drew up questions as the film went on, and it sort of shifts and settles and shifts again, really. So the land that you're standing on, at the end of it, you really have to think again where you are. I mean, the device for Gilroy's increasing malaise, I suppose you could call it, is the sound studio itself. And the potential for life to imitating art is remarkably shown through the quality of the sound editing on this film. It's really, really good. It's such an emphasis in this film, and it's done so brilliantly. It sounds absolutely wonderful. I'd encourage everyone to see this, and I suspect a lot of them won't like it, but I suspect some people will see this, but they will appreciate it in some sense, even if they don't necessarily like it. The film's got an extremely firm handle on the sort of exploitation, Eurotrash, 1970s, grungy, arty, but pretty horrible roots of the films it's sort of based on. And for me, Toby Jones's performance is the glue that keeps all of this together. And I see so many films that are sort of high art and a bit nasty and dark, and I don't like them. I don't enjoy them myself, and I can dismiss them as just sort of a bit of nonsense. I think if Toby Jones wasn't in it, this one could have gone that way as well, but he is absolutely the glue that sticks all this together and makes it, to me, a really impressive piece of work. Really impressive. And I don't know if Jones is up for any awards for this, but I certainly think he warrants it. He is absolutely perfect in this role. Really fantastic performance. And that'll about do it, I suppose. Kind regards, Christopher Thomas.